Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I hope we won't have any volume problems this morning. I was using a different headset, unfortunately, on Wednesday, or Sunday rather, when I was away, but today I'm back in the office, and so have my usual headset, and hopefully everything volume-wise is alright. If you haven't got it, do let me know in the comments. Clive is looked in, and good morning to you, Clive. Nice to see you. Right, okay, so this is Elevenses 366. It's Wednesday the 13th of September. It's another bright and sunny day outside here in London. I have to say, so far it's been a splendid autumn. Temperatures are down a little bit on the sort of mini heat wave that we had. 7 days of temperatures in the 30 degrees, which is fairly astonishing for the time of year, all thanks to Hurricane Franklin, I gather. Nigel's here. He says, not caught us for a while. Good to see you, Nigel. Clive says, can hear you fine. And Aaron also says, loud and clear. Good. All down to the other headset, obviously. Why different headsets come in with different values, I have absolutely no idea. But there you go. And unfortunately, there's no sort of live feedback on the studio software to show that there is actually sufficient audio. Right, anyway, in today's show, what have we got? Biker caught with the world's smallest number plate. We'll look at why they seem to be competing with each other out in Malaysia. Meanwhile, police have caught yet another uncatchable rider, this time in Dorset. E-motorbikes are said to be a growing problem on New Zealand's cycle paths. Meanwhile, here in the UK, cyclists got stopped for riding at 39 in a 30 limit. We'll also look at the tribute to Mike Trimby, who has been a major figure behind the scenes in MotoGP for many years. You may not have heard of him if you don't follow the sport closely. Then we'll have a quick look at a new Zongshen motorcycle, which is using the Norton-developed 650 engine. The Yamaha's XSR900 DB40, which supposedly pays homage to the Deltabox chassis, appeared at Goodwood. And I'll give you a few more details on the record-setting Ultraviolette F77 motorcycle. And we'll finish off today with our third in-depth item on slow control. And this time we'll look at how you can fine-tune your slow control if you've worked your way through the exercises I gave you to do in the previous shows. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 odd minutes or so, whilst I go through all those stories for you. So what have we got? So first of all, let's get on with the news. Now the first item is one of those sort of amusing stories that you hear, which you kind of sometimes wonder, what are people thinking? But it turns out that a biker has been caught with what's claimed to be the world's smallest number plate in Malaysia. Now it refers to the license number actually than the plate itself, but it was said to be about the size of a thumbnail. So if I can manage to get the picture up on screen, there is the policeman in fact holding his finger and pointing to the illegibly small bit in the middle of the plate, which has apparently got the license number on it. It's so small it's even blurred in the photo there, so you can't actually read it in the photograph. Anyway, that gives you an idea of how small the license number on this particular machine actually was. Now it appears that modifying license plates is legal in Malaysia, and the only criteria for the numbers on the plate is that they must remain readable. And so it seems that riders are competing with each other to either create tiny number plates or plates with slogans on, and they're doing this on social media. There are several Facebook pages apparently set up devoted to riders showing off their illegally or illegibly small number plates. Now, police said they caught the biker on September the 2nd as they ran a series of spot checks, and they issued no less than 642 fines to various motorcyclists. But they also, rather more seriously, confiscated 200 motorcycles plus during their checks. But no word on what might happen to the owner of this illegibly small license plate. So, okay, now a second rider who has run into trouble with the law was down in Dorset. He ended up being pulled over after he was apparently overheard claiming somewhere that he couldn't be caught riding his motorcycle, which was illegal, on his commute to work. Well, apparently somebody didn't like the sound of that, so they tipped off Wiltshire's road policing unit, and they simply sent an unmarked car to wait for him at his place of work, which was thought to be in Devizes, they didn't say, and the incident was reported by the police on the social media site formerly known as Twitter, with the road policing unit saying that they had received information that this rider was using the Ducati to commute to work, and that he had been boasting that the police couldn't catch him. We deployed the unmarked car to wait for him to arrive, and guess what? No license, no insurance, no MOT, and SORN. Seized. So okay, so he's had the bike taken away. I guess he hoped that this black Ducati would fly under police radar, but he's going to have an expensive session in front of the magistrate, I would guess. Maybe paying for some of those essentials would have been a slightly better idea. Now, the ever-increasing cost and difficulty of obtaining motorcycle insurance is no doubt part of the problem, which is encouraging uninsured riders, but there's also a growing issue in deciding what's an e-bicycle, or pedelec as they are sometimes known, or an e-motorcycle, with many small motorcycles actually looking distinctly like mountain bikes, just minus the pedals. Now, not surprisingly, there are some riders who seem genuinely unaware of the differences. Anything without a pedal power does need a motorcycle license, and there are some who are no doubt exploiting the visual similarity deliberately to attempt to cover their tracks. But the issue isn't entirely confined to the UK, and there is growing concern about the use of silent e-motorcycles using Otago's bike trails in New Zealand illegally. Now, in New Zealand, the laws allow for the use of e-bikes with pedals and motors up to 300 kilowatt, but anything more powerful than that is classed as an e-motorcycle. Now, Mark Williams of the charitable trust Queenstown Trails, which is responsible for planning, developing and maintaining the trail network in the Wakatipu Basin, he said that the bikes are silent, they're really quiet, so they are surprising people on the trail. And he said that he believed that the riders consider them the equivalent of pedelec e-bikes, and that they are therefore permitted, they believe, to use them on these local walking and cycling trails, which isn't the case. Now, he says people are using the fact that it's an e-motorbike as an excuse to be able to ride it wherever they want. I don't think it's the bike community. I think it's potentially a new group of users coming in. And that's an interesting observation, because the assumption that people who cycle regularly will know the difference is an interesting one. Is that really the case? I don't know. I'd like to see some evidence for that, frankly. But I also do assume that there will be people who have formerly possibly used a trials bike or something, who now have an electric bike for riding stealthily, as it were, who are venturing onto some of these trails. It's certainly the case in the UK, I think. Anyway, he says you don't get any warning if you come around a blind corner and there's someone coming at you at upwards of 50 kph. That's a real problem. Now, to be honest, I'm not convinced by his argument that the problem is the lack of noise. He gives an example of lack of noise causing a crash, probably causing a crash in Australia, where he says an e-motorcycle collided head-on with someone cycling down the track in the opposite direction. Now, the fact is, of course, that you can come downhill on a bicycle quite easily and reach 50 kph, 28 miles an hour or more, even on a dirt trail. I've ridden much faster than that downhill myself, and since a bicycle is almost totally silent, somebody coming round the corner up the hill wouldn't be able to hear the bicycle descending either. And, frankly, a fit rider on a pedelec can still come up a hill at a surprising clip. So I don't buy the lack of noise argument that makes them dangerous. I really don't buy that at all. I'd be interested in comments on that one. Terry's looking in. Don't apologise for being late, Terry. Good to see you here. He says snow on the line at Little Gromit-on-Sea again. Yes, terrible problems you have over there in New Zealand, obviously. Right, anyway, now just as I intimated that lack of engine power isn't an issue if you're cycling downhill, I've certainly topped 50 miles per hour quite easily on a descent myself. In a widely publicised story, police stopped a group of cyclists after they were spotted descending into a village at almost 10 miles per hour over the speed limit in Devon just the other day. No, that's not the picture I wanted. I wonder what I've done with it. I had it somewhere online. Anyway, the incident which occurred in Devon, it was filmed by a police vehicle that was following them, and they then shared the 30-second clip on Twitter, showing the cyclist travelling along a sort of relatively narrow road, past driveways and through a junction, and then across a pedestrian crossing. Now, the incident took place shortly after 9:30 on a Sunday morning, and the camera recorded the pursuing vehicle's speed, but it was showing quite clearly that the driver was following the cyclist at between 37 and 39 miles per hour. Now, as the Devon and Cornwall's roads policing team explained, whilst speed limits do not apply to cyclists, riders can still be charged with dangerous cycling under the 1988 Road and Traffic Act Section 28. That's the one I presume which replaced the wonderfully titled Furious Cycling legislation. I really think they should have left that one in the statute books, but anyway, hey ho. Section 28 then, which sets out that if an offence has been committed by the riding in a way that falls far below what could be expected of a competent and careful cyclist. I suspect there's also a careless cycling charge, which is slightly less severe. But anyway, the riders were stopped. They were asked to be mindful of their speed and offered appropriate words of advice. Now, the video immediately resulted in polarised opinion, of course, in the comment section. Now, out came the very predictable sort of breaking the law or not, it's totally irresponsible to travel on any vehicle at 40 miles per hour in a 30 mph limit. It's 30 for a reason, of course, begging the question, is it really for a reason? But on the other hand, Cycling Mikey came out and he retaliated by saying that there was no evidence of an offence in the video, saying that the speed limit doesn't apply to cyclists. That's probably quite reasonable when a bicycle weighs maybe 10 kilograms and an average car 1.5 to 2 tons. Well, I don't know about that, but because maybe he thinks bicycles can stop instantly because they only weigh 10 kilograms, I don't know. But frankly, that lack of weight works against them fairly positively. I can remember coming down a hill and being unable to stop because I had no traction, and if I'd have tried to use the front brake I would have looped it, and as I was on flints at the time, that wouldn't have been a good thing. I actually shot straight off the end of the bridleway I was cycling on, straight across a road and into a hedge on the far side. So it's not as easy to stop going downhill as Cycling Mikey suggests. Now, as a cyclist, I'm also sure that he's fully aware that just because the bicycle itself weighs 10 kilograms or more reasonable for a typical road bike, about 15 kilograms, that's not what hits someone. What hits someone is the bike and the person who's sitting on it, which could be another 70 kilograms of rider quite easily. And if you hit somebody at 40 miles an hour who's crossing the road, that really is going to send that pedestrian flying. And of course the pedestrian won't be wearing a helmet either. Pedestrians are killed fairly regularly by cyclists. Maybe he's forgotten that cycles are almost silent on their approach, the same issue as in the previous story. And even a pedestrian with good hearing may fail to hear cycles approaching. I've damn nearly been flattened myself by a bicycle going the wrong way down the road after I looked the wrong way. Now, if the cyclist isn't insured, of course, then the injured party is in for a world of hurt as they try to recover damages from that cyclist. And of course, cyclists themselves are just as vulnerable as motorcyclists to smidsy collisions with drivers pulling out of driveways or side turnings who don't see them coming in an environment like that. So the faster the cyclist hits something, the more severe the injuries are likely to be. So as I said last week, maybe it is time for registration plates and insurance for cyclists. Let me know what you think about that. I'll always be interested to hear that. So yeah, if you do have questions on anything I talk about, anything you want to comment on, drop me a line. I will try to get back to you in the show. If I can't do it in the show, I will get back to you after the show is over. Right, okay. But sad news, Mike Trimby, the founder and the CEO of the International Road Race Teams Association, IRTA, he has died at the age of 74. Now, Trimby currently is probably less well known than he was a few decades ago. He raced himself in the 60s as a teenager, competed at the Isle of Man TT and in the F750 World Championship, but he will be much better remembered for his work behind the scenes of MotoGP, or what was the GP series back in the 1980s, and he was instrumental at that time in forcing the organisers of the race series, to start taking rider safety and rider pay seriously. Now, helped by his wife Irene, Trimby set up a union for Grand Prix riders in 1982 to help improve safety conditions, as well as to push for that increase in pay, and to get riders organised after a series of rider strikes where they refused to compete at dangerous circuits. Now, in 1986, he helped create the International Road Race Teams Association as the official body to represent the race teams themselves. Now, Trimby worked hard, tirelessly, to improve circuit safety and paddock facilities, and he also worked to bring TV cameras to race meetings. So the modern sort of MotoGP circus, if you like, is at least partly his work. He also organised the Macau Grand Prix from 1978 to 2011 as a kind of end of season event for riders to go along and enjoy. Sadly, Trimby had been at Misano ahead of the San Marino Grand Prix last weekend, and he passed away on the Friday before the event itself. So a statement from Dorna Sports, the organisers of MotoGP, sent deepest condolences to his wife Irene, his friends, his family, his colleagues, and anybody else who knew him, and said Mike was one of the most important figures in the history of motorcycle Grand Prix racing. His life, achievements and memory will be celebrated during the remainder of the San Marino Grand Prix as the paddock joins together to celebrate him. So that was Mike Trimby, who sadly passed away on Friday. So, right, okay, on to some news about motorcycles. Now, the Norton 650 lives on, sort of. Now, you'll probably recall that when the former Norton management sold their twin-cylinder middleweight Atlas engine to the Chinese company Zongshen, it was presumably a last-ditch attempt to fend off the creditors who were circling the dying company. Now, of course, it wasn't enough. The brand collapsed completely, and it was resurrected, of course, by India's TVS Motor. But Zongshen took the 650 engine, and they have launched one motorcycle. They're expected to launch another using that particular motor, which had been under development during the Stuart Garner era. So, what does it look like? Well, this is the bike in question. This is the Cyclone RX 650, the 71cc parallel twin engine, which is at the heart of it. 71cc? 650cc, 71 horsepower. Is said to be based on the front cylinder bank of the 1200cc V4 engine, which Norton still own, and the motor has featured in this particular bike. This is the RX 650 adventure bike. It was launched by Zongshen under their premium brand Cyclone. So, as well as the engine and the exhaust, the forthcoming RE650 is believed to share many of the components with the adventure bike here, including the frame and the lightweight aluminium swing arm. And this is a render of what the new bike is expected to look like. This is the RE650. So the restyle is developing here is a sort of retro flat tracker sort of style. Very hipster style thing, isn't it? Featuring wire spoke wheels, but it still gets the upside down front forks, LED lights, and the similar side mounted monoshock, which looks the same as the one on the Cyclone RX adventure bike as well. Now hopefully the render will be tidied up a bit before it actually comes on the market, but interestingly it's rumoured that Zongshen are actually working on an 850cc version of the same motor. Now if you want to just a couple of people checked in. Kevin's looked in morning, and Terry says, not sure we're ready, that there's an actual necessity for registering bicycles. He says, Big Brother's reach has to end somewhere. Personally, I wouldn't be comfortable living in a society that felt controlling cyclists was necessary. Right, well, of course, I'll point you straight away at Netherlands, one of the biggest markets for cyclists, one of the countries which embraces cycling most fully, and of course, all cycles in the Netherlands sport a little number plate, Terry. Don't know whether you knew that. Right, okay, on with the next motorcycle story. Now, this one is a bike that was photographed at Goodwood. Let me just get that up on screen for you. There it is. And this is what's being called the Yamaha XSR900 DB40, which is a bit of a mouthful really, isn't it? But it's supposed to be a homage to the Deltabox chassis, which was developed by Yamaha for their two-stroke GP YZR 500s 40 years ago. Hardly seems possible. Now the bike, as seen, was ridden by long-time Yamaha rider Neil Mackenzie, and as you can see it gets a sort of an 80s style fairing with that sort of wide low screen, an 80s style tail cowl popped up behind the riders there, and an Akrapovic exhaust which is supposedly shaped to mimic the TZR's two-stroke header pipes. So for the life of me I can't see how that 3-into-1 style exhaust does that. The bike is built around a standard XSR900. The one feature that really does recall the TZR250, which was the first production machine to use the Deltabox frame design, are those triangular wind deflectors, which are kind of screwed to the outside of the fairing. They always work really well on the road, actually. I was always very impressed with those as handguards. Anyway, the rest of the machine is expected to be standard 900, 818 horsepower, 890 CP3 engine, all wrapped up in the standard Deltabox chassis and complete with the fully adjustable upside down forks and monoshock, sitting on 17-inch wheels and all stopped by Brembo brakes. Now, it's been claimed online that the machine could be seen as an official model, or at least a body kit, I guess, as soon as this autumn. But I couldn't help but noticing that the oblong slot there in the fairing, which at first sight I thought might be a headlight. I'm not sure what it's filled with, whether it really is a headlight or whether it's actually some kind of cooler. Don't know. Anyway, the welded up exhaust at the bottom of the machine there just appears too much of a sort of effort to put into production. Anyway, styling wise, I have to say I think this looks like a parts bin special rather than a carefully crafted homage to a classic design. So I suspect we're far more likely to see the YZF-R9 appear this autumn, the sporty one to match the YZF-R7. Right, okay, so Terry says the Netherlands may well be simply the exception that proves the rule. Well, I don't know, Terry. I'd have a look round and see which other countries require cycles to be registered. Certainly quite a few European countries, I think. Aaron says the YSR headlight does look like a bank of LEDs. Yeah, it kind of does as you zoom in a bit, but anyway, why it's buried quite so deeply in the fairing, I don't know. I do think it's a fairly horrid looking machine. Right, okay, so moving on swiftly. I did report on the long distance record set by an Indian machine, the Ultraviolette F77, and I did offer you a little bit of information about a record breaking run. This is the bike in question. Bala Manikardan, he covered 672 kilometers. Start again. 6,727 kilometers. 600 kilometers wouldn't be too far in 22 days, would it? Yeah, 6,727 kilometers in 22 days on his F77. Now, as I mentioned, it's an electric motorcycle. It's launched in India, and this upgraded model here has just been launched with upgraded performance and a better colour scheme. Frankly, I'm not entirely sure about the better colour scheme, but anyway, hey ho. The bike's still only available in India at the moment, but it does offer some decent specifications. Now, the Space Edition, as this is called, it gets a slight bump in power versus the standard bike. 30.2 kilowatt motor, which is just on 40 horsepower, and that's enough to push the bike along to a top speed of a fraction under 100 miles per hour, which is fairly typical 300 to 400 ICE performance. But of course, as usual with an electric motor, the torque curve is fairly monster. It's 100 newton meters, about 70 foot-pounds, and that comes in pretty much as soon as the motor starts spinning, of course, which means that the bike will accelerate off the line much more quickly than an equivalent petrol machine. Now, the battery range is said to be 192 miles max, which is 307 kilometers, and that is on a single charge, of course, although real world range will always vary depending on your riding style and the environment you're riding in, so expect it to be significantly shorter than that if you're riding at speed. Now, the frame's aluminium. The F77 is also equipped with fast charging capabilities, LED lights, a 5-inch TFT display, multiple rider modes, Wi-Fi connectivity, smartphone pairing, and navigation as standard. But I am not so sure about the special limited edition exclusive aluminium key that they're providing with this bike. Aluminium doesn't tend to be the strongest of materials when you twist it. The bad news is it seems that this particular model will only be built to the total number of 10, but at least it's affordable. It's a surprisingly low price of around about £6,000 UK equivalent. Now, the standard F77, which is a little bit less sporty, that starts at an even more affordable £4,000, roughly speaking. Now, it does really make you wonder how a company in India can turn out a bike like this at such a challenging price point when the nearest UK competitor, the US built Zero, will come in at around 4 times the cost in a showroom here in the UK. It can't all be labour costs. Right, okay, Terry says we'll be interested to see how the Indian EV prices pick up if and when it hits the market. Yeah, that's a fair point. If they do so well, they might well bump the headlights, the price up. Nigel says he finds it incredible that he has to drive at 20 mph whilst being responsible for modified electric so-called bicycles undertaking me at well over 30 miles per hour. That also goes for souped up electric scooters. Okay. Well, of course, the thing is, the pedelec bikes, the electric assist cuts out at 14.6 miles per hour, but a fit cyclist can certainly pedal faster than 20 miles per hour. When I was doing a lot of cycling, I was quite capable of hitting 30 miles per hour on the open road without too much trouble on the flat. Couldn't keep it up for long, mind, but I could do that on my road bike. So yeah, a fit cyclist can travel over 20 miles an hour on the flat, and you can certainly go faster than that downhill, of course. There are non-regulated bicycles too, the illegal ones, and yes, I too have been overtaken by one of those. In fact, I was overtaken by one doing about 50 miles per hour on one occasion, which is fairly scary really. The same goes for the electric scooters, as Nigel says. Right, okay, so moving on to the final item for today, and that's our skills section. This one coming back to the same topic I've been looking at for the last couple of weeks. Now, a few years ago, I was riding up the A20 near Maidstone, which is a sort of fairly fast A road, quite a wide one. Fairly quiet now as the M20 runs parallel to it, and I was just approaching a crossroads when a fire blade howled past me, and then almost immediately the rider stamped on the brakes and indicated left at the same time. Now, the slightly weird thing that got me backing off was that as he decelerated towards the crossroads, he moved further and further and further to his right. Now, at this point, the A20 is a wide road indeed. It was a main trunk road carrying traffic to the Channel ports. So frankly, at the position that he was moving into, an articulated lorry could have passed him on the left with a couple of meters to spare. So rather than attempt to do that, I backed off and waited to see what would happen. Now eventually he was down to walking pace, and pretty much so was I, and then from right up by the white centre line, miles out across the road, he wobbled back across me and finally made it into the side turning on the left of the road. Now you could ask, why didn't he wait? He didn't have to pass me, and certainly not inconvenience me like that, and he would have had plenty of time then to make the turn at his own pace. It's a reasonable question, but of course, why would that make him any safer? Because sooner or later somebody will catch him up while he's trying to turn left like that, and many other drivers would have been undertaking him. So basically what he really needed to do was sharpen up his slow control. So over the last couple of weeks I've been giving you not just some tips but some exercises to try out. So if you didn't catch the two previous shows covering this topic, I suggest you go back and review them. So that's shows number 362 and 364. They're all listed over there on my YouTube channel, so if you do want to catch up with them, that is always the place to go. Survival Skills UK on YouTube. Do head over there, have a look, and when you've read them or watched them, if you haven't done it already, we can move on with the new tips. So now the first thing to say is that once you have the ability to control the bike in a straight line at slow speed, then we need to get it to turn. And the first thing to remember is that, as with any other turn, we initiate it with counter steering. Steering into the turn, as you can do as you're pushing the bike, only works at walking pace or less. Once the bike is rolling at any kind of speed, and we're even talking the sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 miles per hour that we would be travelling at sort of a brisk rolling low speed, it is counter steering that gets it turning. So if you don't remember what counter steering is, go and look it up on my website. There's plenty of tips about counter steering. But essentially, if you want to turn right, you push the right handlebar gently away from you, and if you want to turn left, you push the left handlebar gently away from you. It's a very small amount of pressure, it's a very small amount of movement, but it will get the bike rolling to the lean angle that will take it in the direction that you want it to. So first thing you need to do is practice a bit of counter steering, and the easiest way to do this is to set up a slalom. Now I believe that I talked about cutting some tennis balls, old tennis balls, in two, and use them as little marker points that you can run over quite happily, so they're not a danger if you get things slightly wrong. But the thing to do with these is to put them about 6 long paces apart, so you're getting on for 6 meters, between 5 and 6 meters apart, and then all you do is you ride through them at a gentle speed, not necessarily using your slow control, but you just practice counter steering, pushing right, pushing left, one side and the other, so slalom through the cones. That will really sharpen up your counter steering as an exercise. But then, having done that, we need to be able to tighten our line that we're turning on. This is the job of counterweighting, and this is the technique which allows us to lean the motorcycle into the turn whilst we keep our body upright. So I'm just going to bring out my little model motorcycle. Here it is, early R1 with a Deltabox frame, incidentally. And the idea of counterweighting is that the rider would normally sit vertically on the bike. So as you would lean, the rider's body would also lean smoothly with the bike. But when we counterweight, what we do is we tip the bike into the corner, but the body stays upright. So the bike does the leaning, the body stays vertical on top of the bike. So that is counterweighting. Now, how do we do it? Well, the answer is that we need that posture, which I talked about a couple of episodes ago, where we use the brace position, where we are locked onto the petrol tank with our knees, so that our legs support our body mass and the top half of the torso, everything from the hips upwards, is staying loose on the bike. So we shake out our elbows, you remember I was talking about, and we keep top half of the body loose. But once we can do that, we're locked onto the bike with our knees, we can sway the top half of our body, everything from the hips upwards, from one side to the other. So the idea is simple enough. The bike leans into the corner and we sit upright. Now, the result of this is perhaps somewhat counterintuitive to a lot of people, but because it's the attack angle of the tyres on the road surface which controls the lean, then the bike turns tighter. And you can practice this quite easily if you want to with a motorcycle. If you've got a nice lightweight bike like a 125 or a 250, it's easy peasy. What you do is you stand on the side of the bike and you simply wheel it around in a half circle. So you turn the bars to full lock and you see how much space it needs to walk around with the bike perfectly upright. Now, making sure you're standing on the inside of the bike for this exercise. What you do next is you lean the bike into your hip so that the bike is now leaning over, and you repeat the walking around in a half circle exercise. And what you'll find is that the bike will turn considerably tighter, and there's no other change here. The bars are on full lock, so it's not the steering that's making the difference, it's simply the lean angle of the motorcycle itself. So once we're riding it again, once we're sitting on top of the bike, how do we get the bike to lean over more? Well, any particular speed? Well, the basic answer is that we move body mass in the opposite direction. We lean out, the bike leans in, and the bike turns tighter. So it all starts with that brace position where our knees and our legs are supporting our body mass, and we're keeping the top half of our body nice and flexible. So lean out from the turn, tip the bike in, and the way to do this is to start relatively quickly. A lot of people try to ride too slowly when they try this exercise, and so they feel unstable, they wobble, and they don't like doing it. So the answer is to actually do it at a good, comfortable pace. You can even do it in second gear at 20 miles per hour, and the best exercise to practice is a figure of 8, because what happens as you pass through the middle of the two circles, the figure of 8, you have to change direction, and this is where you can make sure that you can practice swinging your body from one side to the other as the bike itself changes direction. So you lean the opposite way, you sit upright, bike leans into the corner, and away you go. And as you get more confident with uncoupling your body mass from the bike, then you will be able to slow down and tighten those turns up, and you'll find that you can make those quite exaggerated body movements. If you've ever seen the police, sort of the US police doing their Gymkhana style events, watch them, and they are doing exactly what I'm talking about, decoupling body mass from that of the bike. It's absolutely vital for fine machine control in a lot of different situations, and the figure of 8 exercise is the best one to practice this with. But remember, start big, and as you get more confident, then start to slow down and tighten the turns. But remember, never go slower than the point where the bike starts to feel unstable. If you need to turn tighter, you use more lean angle, and that's where the body mass movement comes in. Very easy to lean the bike in further if you lean your body out the other way. Right, and finally, the box exercise. Now this one I designed years ago at the training school, and it looks remarkably simple, but it actually pulls together a whole raft of different techniques: starting, stopping, gear changing, turning and leaning, all together in one simple exercise. So how do you use it? Well, you start in the bottom corner, the left hand corner. You'll see I've written start stop with 2 cones, one either side of the little motorcycle, which are drawn there. So down here, that's where we want to start and stop, and all we do is we pull away. And now remember, pulling away in a straight line will get you your balance. A lot of people try to turn it before the bike is balanced, which makes the turn slow and wobbly. So make sure that you move off in a straight line. And as soon as the bike has enough balance, then what you do is you use your counterweighting to lean the wrong way as you push the bike down underneath you. You use counter steering to actually initiate the turn, and then what you do is you roll round in a 180-degree turn. And what you try to do is come past this second cone here in a fairly straight line, so that you can go straight on to the next section of the bit of ride in a straight line. Now, if you've got space, and what I recommend is that you try to find a car park with enough space to be able to do this, you change up to second gear. So you've come through the turning first, you select second, and then you can slow down again and go back to first gear. Now remember, you can do all this in a straight line. Use the brakes, front brake, rear brake, to get the speed off, and back to first gear again, all while you're upright. And then while you're upright, you come off the front brake and you maintain some pressure on the rear brake. Remember what we were talking about using the rear brake to control your speed. So now you are using your counter steering to get the bike leaning again. You're using your counterweighting to keep the bike turning, and you turn back around the outside of the cones in a nice 180-degree turn, and again you try to come past the cone more or less upright, and you can accelerate again up to second gear, but then this time you're going to come back to a complete standstill. So on the brakes, front and rear, and you stop the bike this time and come back to first gear, and then you simply repeat. And you'll find that this end of the exercise here mimics turning out of a side road where you've come to a complete standstill. This end mimics doing something like a U-turn on a sharp corner because you are rolling round it, or possibly coming out of a junction, a giveaway junction, where you haven't had to stop and you can make the turn. But the fact is that you are making this 180-degree turn at either end. It really focuses your control onto making sure that you know what you're doing on this exercise. So that's the box. As I say, it's probably the exercise that I developed over the years as a basic trainer, which really helped DAS trainees, the ones on the bigger bikes, to master slow control for the bike test. So that, in my opinion, is such an easy looking exercise, but it's actually tough to get it right. But it's putting all the skills that we've been talking about in the previous three episodes, putting it together and being able to deliver it in at least a safe, sterile environment. So next time, how do you do it on the road? Well, next time I'll be looking at one of the classic places where riders are really shown up by their poor control. You'll remember that rider from 2 weeks ago on the Stelvio Pass, and that's on a hairpin bend. So next time out, we'll put it all together and we'll get it out on the road and give you some exercises to try, some methods to try to use on tighter corners. So that is it from today's show. Thank you very much again for looking in. Before I go, I just want to say, if you have enjoyed the show, do please take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you've not already done so. Like the video with the thumbs up icon if you're over there on YouTube. That all helps other people see these shows. Check out my other videos. There are the 60-second safety and 60-second science series, all offering you really useful information, but in a quick to watch, easy to digest format. That's the idea of those 60-second shows. And do tell people about my podcasts, my webcasts, and my survival skills of safety videos as well. Share the links with your riding buddies. So thank you very much. That's it for today. As I say, all feedback very welcome. We've got 3 more comments here. Kevin says he tries not to overthink steering at slow speeds. Well, yeah, you don't need to overthink it, but you certainly need to know how it works. Once you've got the hang of it, it's easy peasy. But if you're trying to turn the bars into a tight corner, and a surprising number of riders will try to do that, you're actually going to be trying to get the bike to roll in the wrong direction. Kevin says he likes the tips on slow control indeed. And Aaron says, how far apart are the cones on the box exercise? Good point, well made. You can start, as I say, if I just go back to the diagram for a moment. Here we go. Make that distance something like 3 meters, 4 meters. The idea is that you're turning around the outside of them, so it's not so difficult as trying to turn inside a cone where you actually need a specific distance. Make it comfortable. You can always tighten the gap up as you improve, and this distance you basically need enough space to get from first to second and back to first. You can pretty much work that out for yourself, but again, if you've got 30 meters or so, that should be plenty. If you've got more space, you can get up to third gear and come back to first, which makes the exercise even more relevant to riding on the road. But yeah, make them comfortable, always comfortable to start with, and then you can always tighten things up. Right, okay, so that is it, as I say, for today. Thank you indeed very much for looking in. Always good to see people and to be able to get some feedback on these shows. That's great. So if you are out there riding today, do have a good day out on your bikes. It doesn't look too bad in terms of the weather, and hopefully see you on Sunday.